So tech, community, culture, you'll often hear these things when it comes to my line of work. But I want to relate this to micro community building, right? So after sharing all that with you, how does this relate to micro community building? Okay, so as somebody who has been exposed to all these different cultures, I always had a soft spot for underdogs. So wherever there was a group or a portion of the population that had it harder than the rest, I always wanted to find a way to leverage my skills and knowledge to help them out. And because I'm so passionate about tech as well, this was always a consistent theme. I'd always find a way to use tech to help people with whatever problems that they have, because it's what I know best. And micro community building, I noticed that as during the 2010s, big tech companies like Google, Meta, Amazon, all of these big tech companies, they were all focused on a massive scale, and especially with the social networks like Facebook, their mission initially, right, was just to connect the world. So they had a very real goal to just get everybody onto their platform, as many people as possible, right? But not very many people know that along the way they actually changed their mission statement to be more in line with essentially supporting communities. And the reason for that is because once you've gotten, as many people in the world onto your platform, there's kind of nowhere else to go. And you realize that, oh, just having more connections isn't enough to help improve the human experience, right? And I think we can all agree that this is usually because most of us are seeking intimacy, we're seeking authenticity. And when you are just connected to thousands, tens of thousands, even millions of people, of course you don't know all of them intimately. Many people that follow you might, but you as a creator, you won't know all those people intimately. And so there's kind of been a rubber band effect where we're snapping back to smaller and more intimate groups. And what was interesting is that around 2013, this is actually where I stumbled upon Bitcoin. And you might notice my style is I kind of jump back and forth, but get to the point eventually. So bear with me. So in 2013, I actually stumbled upon Bitcoin while I was working at that co-working space. And the more I learned about it, the more fascinated I became with how communities were forming around that piece of technology, or at least the hope of it. And then, so my first exposure was more from a community side versus the technology. But because I have a background in technology, I then started exploring the technology itself. The more I explored, the more I realized just how big of a deal Bitcoin is as a core fundamental technology. Now, we can argue that like anything has lost its way, but if you actually look into the technology itself, it actually resembles a lot of the workings of highly efficient, productive, intimate micro communities. Why do I say this? Bitcoin is actually built on the concept of small world network. And if you've never heard of this before, this is similar to how, if any of you have traveled around, right, or being outside of your known neighborhood or city, you might bump into somebody that you know in a place that you might not expect them, right? This is often known as the small world effect. And that same effect is actually built into the way that the technology runs for Bitcoin itself through this small world network. And so then, as I got deeper into Bitcoin, I then came across the concept of micropayments technology. And this word micro just kept coming up again and again. And I was wondering, why would a technology that is really being built to scale and serve the world have these elements of the micro or the small so deeply embedded into it? And then I was actually able to find the correlation with that and communities as well, outside of that tech bubble. And fast forward to today, we are now seeing that reversion back to smaller groups, micro communities, whereby people are realizing, oh, I don't actually need thousands or millions of followers to actually even have a profitable business. I could have 100 people, right? And that community would actually be enough. If any of you have ever heard of the term the Dunbar number, the Dunbar number is a number that is around 150, and essentially the theory is that at most each human being can only manage up to 150 contacts in their lives. Yet If we look at how social media works, we're dealing with some crazy numbers in terms of the connections, right, that we have. But we really don't need more than 150 even to have a profitable business, right? And so that number, I'm sure if I asked all of you, right, like how many close friends do you have? I doubt it would be 150. Despite how many followers you may have on social media, it might even just be a handful. And this actually goes back to what I was inferring with Bitcoin itself, uh, in terms of the small world network effect, that having really strong relationships with a smaller group can actually be a lot more effective for you, even as a business, than having a, a business on the surface that just has a large following, or many people in your group, because of the close, tight-knit relationships. And those close, tight-knit relationships, if worked well, can just do a lot more for you. And there are some actually there are some really good examples of how this directly relates to ROI.